Welcome everybody, thanks for coming to our Plaid Ifanc Fringe event. It's nice to see people in person and actually to do something in person rather than online, which is nice too, but it's nice to see everybody in person. So thank you so much for coming and for staying until the end of the conference to be able to come and see our Fringe event. Now hopefully today, with our Fringe event, which is kind of quite a broad thing really, about empowering young people. And it's a discussion really on a variety of topics with our esteemed panellists on how we can get youth representation in a range of different areas. And so we'll be discussing a few different topics, as I said, but the key messages really is about whether young people should have the say when it comes to issues that involve or matter to young people, rather than just a say. The same as when we say issues that matter to Wales should be made in Wales. Should the same apply to young people? Should issues that matter most to young people kind of be decided upon by those young people? So, as I said, we've got a fantastic range of panellists today. We've got Lynette, who is our Women's Officer for Plaid Ifanc. We've got Dewi John, who is a Policy and Research Officer from Shelter Cymru. We've got Alice Pearce, who is the Welsh Youth Parliament for Cardiff Central. And we've got Derek Gill, who is our Member of the Senedd for South Wales East.
And I'm too old to be in Plaid Ifanc, oh God.
But you are an honorary member.
Yay!
Okay, so our first question. One challenge that faces young people is the difficulty of finding a stable and affordable home in their own community. What impact do the panellists believe this has on the empowerment of young people in Wales? And what are the best means of addressing the problem? Do young people have enough of a say over housing policy and support systems? Darren, we'll come to you first on this about housing. Yeah, you can see that, so that's fine.
I'll take around the mask off so you guys can hear me better, because it's the one issue with masks, muffles everything. So yes, where housing is such a detrimental, has such a detrimental impact on everything really. It's such a multifaceted issue. It's hard, as we say at Shelter Cymru, home is everything, and it's really important that we sort of drill that in, especially as we've done recent work with the NUS, where we've had lots of young people have said to us that housing has such a impact on their mental health, and they're seen as student housing is seen as this right and passive that it shouldn't be a bad thing, and it shouldn't be, as students have already had and hard enough time as it is. We shouldn't make it harder than it is. And we had one casework where a student was doing an exam and a rat ran through their room at the same time. And you just think you're in this place of learning, this is going to impact your job opportunities when you finish, that this is such a big thing. And our big thing is we need to build more social homes, and we welcome the commitment by the Welsh Government to build 20,000 new low-carbon social homes. But we have got to stress though with the new supply chain issues that this could set the target back. We do hope this isn't the case, but we would really like to see new social homes being built, because everyone does need a safe and secure, stable home. And sorry, something's stuck in my throat. And with this housing, if we don't build these social houses, we're going to be pushing more people into the private rented sector, which isn't necessarily the most affordable option or the right option for many people. And if we do this, then we're going to be setting up young people for a fall. And our recent campaign to fight discrimination has shown that 10% of landlords had said they would not grant to someone of all ages, and you pick the classic trope of young people are not responsible with money, or they've got to be young professionals to be able to get onto the rented ladder, and it's just these tired old cliches and really need to be retired. And our campaign hopefully was shining a spotlight on this, as that sunlight hopefully is the best disinfectant to deal with this. So so our big thing would be to build more social homes and build houses in the right places that are actually affordable, because otherwise we are just setting up people for a fail, and it's just not the right way to do it. And if we actually want to help young people achieve their full potential, we actually need to give them good quality housing. As I said previously, home is everything, and home will impact everything from mental health, education and job opportunities.
Absolutely, and to be able to set them up for the future is really important. But Leonard, what do you think about the first part of the question? What do you think that issue has on the empowerment of young people? If they can't find a stable home, they are having trouble in the homes that they live in, they aren't in particularly good condition. As stated, it is affecting their mental health and their learning. What effect do you think that might have on the empowerment of our youth in our democracy and in all areas of our society?
This is actually a really well-timed question for me. I'm a university student. I've just finished going through the process of setting up my housing for next year. and how much it's changed in just the last couple of months of the price increases on everything. There's so many landlords around my town that have gone from offering accommodation with gas and electric and all that kind of stuff included, so you don't have to have that extra pressure of having to go to all these different businesses. They've recently decided to stop doing that because it's just not economically viable for them anymore. So it's a very stressful situation, especially for university students. They've already just moved away from home. It's a new thing. They've not had to deal with any of this before. Maybe they've not had the conversations with parents of who do I go to when I have to deal with this issue? How do I actually do this? And suddenly we're getting all of these price increases. There's ended up being a group set up in my town for students that can't actually find housing or can't afford the housing where they're living or can't afford the electric. There's this big Facebook group being created for, I need somewhere to crash, I can't afford my rent at the moment, has anyone got a spare bed? Which is awful, but unfortunately we're in a situation where everyone's just aware that that's a thing that's happening, which is awful. So hopefully we can see some changes soon, but what I'm seeing is prices are getting worse and worse. And it's definitely affecting people's mental health. I've got a lot of people who are in bad situations at the moment just because we don't have the information needed to know where to go. And what can you do when you're stuck there? There's not, as far as most people are aware, nothing to go to actually get that help.
Absolutely. It's okay if I jump in, sorry, quickly. If anyone is in need of support of housing, Shelter Cymru does have a number of resources that are made to help young people and students. We do have a student checklist, we have Shelter Cymru Live, and our phone number as well. And also importantly as well, go and talk to student unions as well. They have got offices that can help you as well, where your academic advisors are there as well as the student unions. Also, please do utilise every support option that's open to you guys.
I think, yeah, that's so important, and it's wonderful that those avenues of support are available, but it's just horrendous that that support has to be there. Just hearing about that the fact that people have to organise over Facebook to say, oh, I need an emergency place to send, that isn't just presumably just for a night, but for weeks on end. I think in terms of the impact it will have on the empowerment of young people in politics, how most of us have got involved in politics probably is at a local level. And so if you don't have a permanent base, you also probably don't feel like you've got a stake in your community and you're not able to make those connections with other people in that immediate way. And I mean, like everyone's been saying already about the psychological impact this is going to have on people, if you are stressing all the time about where am I going to be in 3 months from now, or whether it's going to be 6 months from now, unless you know that you've got a stable place that you know certainty that you're going to live in this place for years to come, that's going to be always hanging over your head. And when I was renting in London, I always knew that where I was going to be, the landlord was going to end up putting up the rent, and so we never felt, that we could put things, I don't know, even put things on the walls. Not because of particular rules, although sometimes there can be rules about things like that, but just what's the point in putting down roots because you're only going to have to go somewhere else. So I think politically that's going to have a toll not just on someone's personal, how they feel in themselves, but also just whether or not they're able to organise with other people. So yeah, we need to not just be helping individuals, we need to be putting a cap on rents. We need to be rebalancing the whole system in favour of people who are renting instead of landlords. We've got this British, and I think this is a British specifically, this British obsession with home ownership. I'm not saying that should be a good thing, but for good or bad, all the things in between, that is the context that we all live in. I know that there are lots of countries on the continent where it's not as normal to want to own a home, but because that pressure is on us here, and most people, that's what we should aspire to, it makes them people feel who can't afford that they are missing out and that they're the ones without roots, and the context is what's important there, I think.
Absolutely. Alice, what about you as a young person who's kind of yet to kind of try to get on the property or to look for your own housing? Does that frighten you, the thought of when you get there what might be the case, or people that does it frighten them?
Yeah, definitely. Speaking to young people, because I know I want to go away for uni, and whoever you talk to say, oh, the prices are going up for houses, and instantly goes into my mind, I'm going away, I've got no family where I want to go, instead of you, where am I going to stay? So I think that's definitely something that's always been in the back of my mind, and it's even important to consider staying in Cardiff and not going to uni I want to, because I may not be able to afford the accommodation. So yes, it definitely plays a huge role in my life, really.
Yeah.
The fact I've always got to take where I'm going to live, and can I afford it into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely, and as Joey said, that it directly correlates then with someone's learning journey and how far they're going to be able to go, if they can go to the universities they do want to go to, whether they can, you know, for example, move right across the country to, you know, the other end of Scotland perhaps, you know, or into London, which is even more notoriously difficult, we know. But I think lots and lots of viewpoints there, and all really very valid, so thank you. Let's move on to the next question, just in the interest of time. So many young people, particularly those who are too young to vote, can feel that they do not have a stake in Welsh democracy. In what ways can young people throughout Wales make their voices heard and affect positive change in their communities and be made to feel a central part of society as a whole? Are new mechanisms needed that ensure everyone gets a say on the laws that affect them? Well, actually, Ed, I'm going to start with you this time. As a youth parliament member, obviously you will have an insight into this, but do you think that there is a disconnect between people who are too young to vote and to kind of be disenfranchised with democracy?
Yeah, definitely. I know when I came out a year ago, there were loads of things that I wanted to change, but I didn't know how I could go about doing it. So I started off with joining my local health board, which allowed me to decide on things like CAM services, like the letters they send up when you receive your appointment for CAMs, things like the waiting lists and other, well, all sectors of health, which for a young person they don't often get a say in the matter. So I was fortunate enough to be a member of my local health board, which then led to youth parliaments, where I've been able to talk to some amazing people, and I've already been able to raise my voice in the first residential, where I was able to talk about the importance of equality groups in schools. But yeah, that's a great way. If young people want to get involved, then there's a 2-year term, run as a youth parliament member. Even if you don't get elected, you still get your voice up there, and you still get listened to as a candidate. So I think it's a great way to get into politics and get your voice heard.
Absolutely. Do you think it's important for young people to utilise the youth parliament members to be able to get involved? They might not know that the health board exists, for example. So do you think that is a way that young people can utilise the youth parliament members to be able to kind of get into the core of their society, you think?
Yeah, definitely. I know before I was elected, I was talking to Guion, the person who was elected before me, and that helped loads, and I was able to raise my voices about issues that are important to me, and talking to him made me realise that I wanted to run as a youth parliament member so I could help people in the same way that Guion helped me when I wanted to go into politics.
Thank you. Gary, in terms of organisations like Shelter Cymru and other similar organisations, what can young people do to kind of, if they are in a position to, how can they feel like they're having their voices heard or get involved in an organisation like yours, if they're still too young to vote, perhaps?
Yeah, so that's a brilliant question, thank you. With Shelter Cymru, we do offer the Youth Pathway programme, so a way for young people to volunteer and get involved, and it helps them develop skills and learn important skills that will help them later on in life with a job, and also confidence as well, and empowering them to help them gain those skills as well. And we also go into schools with our early prevention officers to help young people get to school to hopefully prevent homelessness down the line, because if we can help get every young person with a certain set of skills ready for when they grow up in the world, hopefully then they'll have the confidence in themselves so they can do that, because often, it's important to say that parents do help. Lots of young people do not have parents that are supportive. You can be LGBT and be kicked out and don't have that support, and it's really important that we do, through education, give young people these skills to help them thrive, because if not, we are seriously letting them down.
Yeah. So what do you think about the questions that are holding about young voices?
I can't disagree with anything that either of you have said. The the thing which intrigues me about the question is the last bit about are new mechanisms needed. And right, so there's some, and I don't have a firm opinion on, well, I do think that there's some mechanisms that are needed. For example, I think that we should be reforming the voting system so that it's more proportional, so that everyone certainly feels that their voice is stronger. But that isn't going to specifically help young people, it's going to help everyone's connection with politics. And I think that if this probably isn't a mechanism, but I think that we have to be focusing properly on improving political education, but not just in terms of like top down, like telling young people things. The important thing is empowering young people so that they feel that they've got a stake, that you know, so many of you have got a stake in politics. And I think, I wonder what the thing, I don't have a definitive answer on this, but I think that one of the things that we should be asking young people about this, what would make young people, as this homogenous group as though it's just young people, what would make more young people feel excited about politics? Because I think, because it's so fantastic when we do actually see young people who are actually engaged and see that if politics is something that can not just affect them, but that they can affect as well. How can we make more young people feel that way? Because, I mean, it is fantastic that 16 and 17-year-olds can vote, but so few 16 and 17-year-olds did vote. How can we get that right? How can we, and that isn't on young people, by the way. That's on all of us, that we haven't done enough to make young people feel like they've got more of a stake in this. So, I mean, I'm very floweringly not answering the question in a very way. I think we need to, I think it needs to go hand in glove, that we need to have changes in the education system, but equally we need to have more direct conversations. And I mean, not just like, oh, you know, nice little conversations. I mean, some kind of formal way of having these conversations, town hall meeting style things, with young people, so that we can try and reshape politics, so that it isn't just getting young people to come over to us, but getting us to involve young people instead.
Yeah. I'm actually going to know what you did. I'm going to go on to the next question, because it's kind of tied hand in hand here. Because it ties into that kind of question of education. So the Welsh Baccalaureate currently includes global citizenship challenges at both level 2 and 3 to try and engage students more with wider society in Wales and beyond. How effective do you think this is? And do you think more needs to be done to tackle civics, politics, and key life skills surrounding things like finance and housing within the classroom in order to give young people the skills they need to be heard and make a difference? And the reason we've done that is because it kind of directly ties what you were saying then, Dennis. Then, in terms of your experience in secondary school and before and after, did you ever learn about civics or politics or finance, or what was your experience of those issues in school?
So, I think currently in education, hopefully this is going to change with the new educational reforms that we've had recently that I'm very excited about. But before, especially when it came to the Welsh Baccalaureate, it was always kind of thrown at young people as this is a thing I've been told I've got to tell you, so I'm going to read it to you, and then we can move on, because I don't really know why I have to say this, so let me just tick the box, and that should be good enough. Because I think the expectation always is that politics is a very complicated subject, and young people won't be able to understand it, so why should we try to explain that? I'm from a family of teachers, and I think something that I found from that is when you do open those conversations with young people, they do genuinely understand what's going on, do genuinely have some brilliant opinions, but things just aren't explained to them, or aren't explained in a way that they can understand. It's always as this is very complicated, but you're going to need to know this when you're older. And I think it's one of the reasons we had low turnout from young people, was either they weren't sure what to do, or it was quickly told to them as, you're old enough to vote now, so register and then turn up at this day and vote. And that was it. It might be different depending on your family, because some families can be really open about it. Some schools may be a lot more open about the situation. But I think it's a change we're going to see coming with the new way that education is going to be framed. Things are going to be a lot more open. But I think people just need to know that while it can be complicated, it doesn't have to be complicated when you explain it to people. And if you explain things in the right way, people will understand, and young people will just run with it and give you the most amazing solutions that maybe you hadn't even thought of. But you can't find that out without starting that conversation in the first place.
Absolutely. I mean, as a teacher myself, and having to teach the Welsh back a little bit, and enjoying tackling these issues, I know from experience that there are teachers who don't feel comfortable enough to talk about politics. They aren't themselves involved in politics directly. They wouldn't know where to start to talk about democracy to young people. And so I think we are doing a disservice to our teachers in that sense. If we're not educating them to be able to educate our young people, then there's going to forever be that disconnect. I know some of my colleagues who detest teaching the Welsh back, but because it's not their subject specialism, you know, and it's something that you said that it's going to be put on them, so they feel like it's been thrown on them. The students then feel like it's been thrown on them, so it becomes this subject that nobody really has any passion for. It's just added to your job list, it's added to their subject list as something else that they don't want to focus on. So I think that's a real key issue in terms of, you know, working our way from the top to make sure that the people who are teaching these key issues that matter so much to our young people are actually passionate about it, or know enough to be able to ignite that passion in our young people. Delith, you know, as you said you're the only non-Ifanc member on the panel, and I don't wish to make you sound any older. But have things changed since you were
oh, my nose did.
Since you were in school, have things changed? Sorry, Darren.
No, it's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I think that they have. No. The fact that we're having this conversation about how can these subjects be framed when it's no. I mean, these things in this guise, at least. I mean, I had phenomenal teachers, but there just wasn't the space in the curriculum. And yes, I agree completely that we need to go further, by the way. I think it's something to do with the fact that this is a tendency to, well, for one thing, it's because our education system is focused way too much around we need to help children, we need to help children when they are children, actually, because when they're from like year 3 or something, so it is children. We need to help children and then young people to pass exams. And so we need to give them the right information. And I think that for something like politics is messy, right? You know, okay, you can look at it in the same way that you would look back on political moments as though it had all been scripted and there's this kind of wonderful narrative. No, that's about, you know, whether you just happen to win this vote or this kind of pivotal conversation happened to happen in that corridor, in that moment. Things could have happened very differently because politics is chaotic. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. You know, it's something which could change at any moment, which is one of the things that makes politics so exciting and so essential. But that makes it very difficult, I think, to teach and to get people, young people to, or people at any age, because I mean, frankly, getting people involved in politics, political education shouldn't just be for young people, it should be for people of all ages, I think. And it's just to start with young people. But it's the same phenomenon in terms of how maths can be taught. You can have amazing maths teachers, but if it's not taught in a way where you can see the applicability to your life. I mean, my dad used to tell me about how in one of his maths classes in school, they were doing trigonometry, isn't it, with the shapes? It's not good enough. So there was something like, oh, you know, there's a tree, and there's a ladder against the tree, and you had to work out what the something was between, oh God, between the ladder and the tree. And someone put their hand up and says, sir, is the tree straight? And the pedagogy teacher said, get out, what a stupid question. What a wonderful question, because in real life, no tree is actually completely straight. And I don't think the kid was actually trying to be a wise, you know, he was really asking. And it's the same thing, is that if we can again, and I think it is about the support that we give teachers, but also the way that it's framed generally. It's not just about, okay, you need to learn X, Y, Z, and these are the things, and it's about creating a space where we can talk about the messiness and the chaos, because that's what makes it this moment, that at any moment a flash can go off and it will change.
I think that's to what I said, what you said, sorry, about teaching for exams and teaching set information. That doesn't go hand in hand with the chaos of politics and the freedom to be able to explore those views. That's very much kind of contradictory to what teachers are taught to teach. You know, so I think that's really interesting.
Like,
Yeah, Darren, go please.
On the framing point, I think it's also not just about teaching young people, but as those that are older than young people, to listen to them. And I think it's really important that, you know, I just think about when I go back to when I was in secondary school, you know, think about what has changed compared to now. You know, we've seen how young people can have such a detrimental, massive impact on society. We look at the climate strikes and how climate change, when I was in school, was still very fringe and not that important. And now it's at the forefront of everything that we talk about.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can do that in a constructive way, get young people passionate about how they can impact, I think that'll do really empower them to make those decisions. I think that, you know, the young people, sorry to use this expression, they're a resource that we just don't tap into enough. They are our future, and we should be tapping into their potential and their desire to make things better.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I move to the next question, and is any member of the panel still in school? We've got the complete other end of the spectrum now, guys. As the only member of the panel.
I'm only 34!
Something is obviously.
Luke Fletcher telling me that his age is flying away. sorry, I was back.
It's fine. So as the only member of the panel still in school, something has obviously been different for you to make you sit here today, or be as invested as you are. What do you think that kind of trigger was? Because, I don't know, you tell me, are your peers as engaged in politics as you are? And what do you think that kind of trigger was that set you on a slightly different path to them?
So I came out about a year ago, and there were loads of things I wanted to change,
Yeah.
to which I had no idea how to change any of them.
Yeah.
I knew of the youth parliament, no idea we had a local health youth board. So I spoke to a friend of mine who is a huge LGBT activist in Wales, and she recommended I join a health board, which then into youth parliament. Yeah, I think it was the fact that I didn't know where to go to change things that I wanted to. Obviously, I spoke to certain teachers at my school, which then led to being part of the equality group that the school now has. So I think it was just due to the fact that I had no idea what to do, and there were loads of things that I wanted to change.
Yeah.
And it was one thing led to another, and now, fortunately, I'm involved in quite a bit when it comes to equality within school.
Yeah, absolutely. I think going back to that previous question, we were mentioning mechanism, not what you do. I suppose what you have in your school, like an equality group, or another school might not have, and so that's something that we could perhaps look at, is having something that across all of our schools we make mandatory and we improve on, rather than just having certain schools through the knowledge of their own teachers creating an equality group, for example, so something that needs to be more kind of streamlined across our schools. Thanks, Ellis. So, the Future Generations Act binds the Welsh Government and the Senate to make proper considerations for the well-being of young people yet to come when administrating policy and passing laws. How effective is the current Future Generations Act at ensuring the long-term sustainability of projects, and is it utilised to its full potential in all sectors? Should young people be put in control of the Future Generations Commission?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question at the end there. I like that. Cheeky, but in a good way.
That's our motto.
But in a good way. Like that would be the big next Oh God, sorry. Right, so for the first part, the Future Generations Act, it is this, well, worldly, not worldly, across the world, it is heralded as being this amazing thing. And in terms of the principle of it, it is such a brilliant idea. And what I'm about to say doesn't take away from the fact that it's a brilliant idea. The problem behind it is that there's not enough financial backing to make sure that it has teeth. So if, for example, any public sector organisation or local authority were to be in contradiction of the Future Generations Act, there have been cases where it's been taken to court and it just hasn't been able to be enforced. So I think that there needs to be more. Well, there needs to be more investment in the Office of the Future Generations Commission. I think Sophie Howe in lots of ways has done a really good job, but they haven't got enough budget. I really love this idea about young people being, well, I like it, being put in control of the Future Generations Commissioner. I think that the Office of the Future Generations Commissioner has done a lot of youth engagement, and a lot of work in schools. And I'm just thinking about the Children's Commissioner and the work that the Children's Commissioner's Office does. And I think maybe there could be more of a role or mechanism, like we were talking about in one of the other questions, between those two commissioners' offices, maybe, for there to be some kind of, not just a challenge panel, because that's just looking at what's being decided and then looking to see how it can put into place, but maybe involving young people directly in the decision making. I'm not sure how it would work, but I really like it as a principle.
Yeah, I know the Child Commissioner has a youth advisory panel.
Okay.
So there are, I don't know how many members there are, but there's always one member. There's always one member who attends meetings. They've always got a youth voice on the panel. There's always a youth voice in meeting, which I think that would be very important when it comes to the Future Generations Act. Because it revolves around young people. So there should always have at least one young person's voice on the panel for a meeting at all times.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts?
I think it's brilliant that we've actually got it in the first place. I think no matter maybe some of the negatives of it and the fact that it can't be as enforced as we'd like it to be, just the fact that it exists is a big step. Because I think it's one of those things that you hear about for the first time and you go, why didn't that exist already? Why is that? And that feels like it should have been a thing that existed already, you know? So, as much as it obviously needs a lot more teeth and a lot more backing to it, but the fact that it exists and we're able to speak about it and able to say, look at this brand new thing, it's amazing, let's keep moving, really good.
Yeah.
Hopefully they could do more work for the Children's Commissioner, because they do some really good work.
They do brilliant
The Youth Advisory
yeah.
panel as well do some brilliant things. If you don't know about it, please look it up. It's amazing. It's genuinely work for young people, with young people actually doing the work. It's not, oh, we better talk to someone who's young quickly to check they're doing the right thing. It's there from the start. So if Future Generations Act could be following a similar thing, I think it could only improve it. I can't see any negative to having young people leading it. I think it's only something that can help it go further.
Are there any thoughts?
Very briefly, sorry, I can agree with the panel in the broad sense of this act has been very good. It's separate apart from many of our European partners and worldwide partners. And it is actually a really good thing, but there is still scope to do more. And I think that the fact that we haven't yet got the right to adequate housing is showing in law sort of shows that in a way, because it just shows that we haven't got this right to adequate housing in place yet. Shows that maybe necessarily in some spheres, yes, the Future Generations Act does do really well, but in other sectors it maybe is still a little bit behind.
Yeah. Thank you. Shall we move on really quickly? I'm just aware of time, we've got about 15 minutes or so. The cost of living crisis arrived on the back of 2 years of the coronavirus pandemic and the economic fallout of Brexit, and seems set to worsen following the illegal invasion of Ukraine. What will the main impacts of this crisis have on young people, and how can we help to mitigate the worst effects? Is it right that many economic and social opportunities are taken from young people against their will by forces out of their control? Dennis?
No, of course it's wrong. It's wrong that it's happening, and we talk about this so often in the Senate, and I know that there are so many aspects of the cost of living crisis. Yeah, sure, there are some, of course, that are outside of people's control, but even if we're talking about things like market forces, it is down to decision-making, yes, some decades ago, but then perpetual decision-making. That means that the UK has decided, no, it's not can't, it decided that it would not be right for it to intervene to make sure that our energy bills aren't going to be increasing. So what's the statistic? That our energy bills are going to go up by 54%, in France it's about 4%. We've got energy companies like EDF that are owned, state-owned by the French government, essentially, the French state. And they the money, the revenue that they've raised from us will be used to reinvest in their public services in France. Great for them, that's exactly how it should be. Why on earth doesn't happen? Sorry to hear, but it's just so, it should be against the law that this is happening. And that, you know, essentially we can see this crisis coming. And in terms of, no, I'm not going to just rant, sorry, because I know that everyone's going to agree with me on this. In terms of the impact it's going to have on, well, young people, as with anyone except the lack of stability that young people are going to have in the first place, and the even, you know, what we were talking about earlier about the fact that so many young people won't have stability in terms of housing market, in terms of the impact that has on their mental health. What we need to do, and so I'm trying to do, we need to have more powers in Wales. We need to make sure that we can make decisions about people's welfare, about how it is that we can intervene, because this isn't just something that people should just be left out to deal with the worst effects of the market. It's wrong. Government should be intervening. The UK won't do that. Wales should have the powers so that we can do it to help our own people. Everyone living in Wales, I mean, for that.
Darian, on a practical level, what are you seeing day to day at the moment, particularly in regards to housing, because of the cost of living crisis, because of these issues that we just mentioned? What is the message that you're getting? What are you seeing every day?
Even before the cost of living crisis, we had a number of people, especially in the private renting sector, come to us with affordability issues, and I feel like this is only going to make things worse, and especially for young people, because as we know, if they look at young people the hardest, they're a group of people that have already got the lowest amount of assets compared to older people, so therefore this is only going to further impact them, push them further into poverty. And very much a lot of our policy in Celtic is led by our casework, and we are trying to see where the impacts happen and how we can best help. But you know, it's really hard to keep up with that scale of demand. And as we sort of delve into it, I think on the telly the other day, we had the money saving expert saying that, you know, if I can't help anyone save any more money, I think that shows that something does need to change. And I think that, you know, it's quite sort of damning that we've had a money saving expert say that more needs to be done.
Yeah. I think he can't do anything, that he's running out of things he can do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's... I think one of the awful things is people my age who are aware that they're about to go and having to start paying these bills themselves. You know, they've moved out, gone to university, whatever. It's sad that we know and expect the fact that we're going to have to pay more than friends who've already gone into that. And I think one of the things that I've noticed recently is in people in my year, we're aware we're going to have to pay more than friends who moved the year before. But it's become such a big jump. It's not, you know, 1% more, it's not a few pounds extra, it's like massively more money than people before us. So it just comes to the point that we can go to afford it, but you can't live without electricity and gas and all of that. There's nowhere for you to go. So, yeah, it's just kind of a slightly hopeless situation, really, because the powers don't currently exist to fix the situation. So, it needs to change in everything.
And these are basic essentials. These are things that we all have the right to. And yet, people in society, young people, of course, but generally in society, people who are already the most tightly squeezed are again being pushed closer and closer to poverty levels, to the red line, even more so than before. And there's nothing that they can do about it. And so no wonder that we look at these past crises, no wonder people are so disenfranchised, no wonder people aren't taking part in the democracy, because they feel like their voice doesn't matter. They feel like they have nothing to do with the decisions that are being made for them and being put on them. Alice, what do you think about the cost of living crisis and how that might affect young people?
So I know it's something that's definitely been discussed in schools.
Yeah.
This sort of links back to the question about washback. This is something we've learned about washback and how this will affect young people, and not so much what they can do, but how it will affect them as young people in the future. But yeah, it's definitely something that's discussed amongst young people. Like when I said about going off to university, something else that plays a huge role in my decision is, will I be able to afford it? Not only property, will I be able to afford things like water, energy. But yeah, I think it's something it's definitely discussed with children. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed more within schools.
Yeah.
About how it will affect them, and how they can get support and get basic needs that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy. You hear these phrases thrown around, young people of the future, which is absolutely right. If you're not making life livable for young people, how can you expect them to thrive and be the future if you're taking away things that are their right to live? How can you expect them to step into democracy? How can you expect them to do all these wonderful things, to move away to university, to start their lives, if everything has just been taken away from them and they're not having a good quality of life in any sense of the word? So I think that's what's really horrible to see, is so many people being disenfranchised. I half don't blame them. I really don't. I think if I was in a worse off position today, I too would be completely disenfranchised. I really would. I'm just going to move to the last two questions, if I may. This one here is that the climate and nature crises continue to be key issues for young people, and they threaten our society as we know it, which, combined with climate anxiety, can make young people again feel powerless and hopeless. What changes to the ways that we live our lives, in particular regarding how we generate our energy and build our homes, can young people help to change, and how might they overcome the feeling of despair inspired by climate predictions? Why should young people wait on those who won't endure the worst effects of climate change to solve their issues? And the last bit that is key here is that why should people wait for people who are not really around to face those worst parts of climate change? Dennis.
The anger that you were talking about there, the kind of feeling disenfranchised, and I think that it linked with climate anxiety. So climate anxiety, so this is something which I know it's been in the press a lot, but it's something that I've become aware of, even then I've noticed the tendency in myself as well that I feel climate anxiety. It's this feeling of everything seems overwhelming, the graphs and everything just seems so relentlessly bleak. And it's like it's going to overwhelm us because everything's awful. There are things that we can do. I think, like when we're talking about disenfranchisement generally for young people, what we need to do first is acknowledge the problem, and instead of gaslighting young people and saying, oh, either don't worry, or, oh, it's not so bad. Well, no, actually, no, it's a really bad situation that we're in. And young people have every right to feel scared and angry at decision makers that not enough has been done to help their future. That anger is totally justified, and we can't get further until we've actually acknowledged that. But they are things that we can do, and it's by working together and making young people, but all of us, feel more empowered, I think, and being able to say, okay, so what are the things that we can do? Community projects. What can we do in terms of trying to get involved in politics to help change decision making? That actually does practical help, but it also helps us feel empowered, and it will do away with us feeling so alone and in this sense of climate grief, because we're not on our own. But I think we have to acknowledge that and work together in order to do it. And Alice, you look like you're either agreeing or you really disagree, and I want to know which one it is.
No, I totally agree with you, especially about young people getting more involved in politics, which then leads to helping the climate crisis in some way or another. Once again, allowing young people to raise their voices about key issues. I think it's something that needs to be discussed more in schools, because it's discussed in science lessons about how we can use renewable energy and things like that. It's not. We don't necessarily discuss how much of a severe issue it actually is in our community. So if young people are encouraged to maybe write a letter to their aunts to see what they're doing to help the environment, to get involved in local projects, I think that's one way of getting young people involved in politics and helping the next person at the same time.
Terry?
I think on the last bit of the question, yeah, young people shouldn't wait. I think we've seen the power of young people already, as I mentioned earlier through the climate strikes, that they are having a real impact already, and I think continue the good work. And as much as I know it's hard, it's really hard to see the wood for the trees, especially with the climate crisis, but focus on the positives of what you guys have achieved so far, because that in itself, you've achieved more than some third sector organisations might achieve in 5 to 10 years just by yourselves, organising yourselves, and I think that you guys deserve a massive well done for that, and I don't think that is said enough. But from a housing point of view, you know, there's more we can do to tackle climate change, but I think there's also an opportunity to help different bits, like the cost of living crisis, if we better insulation in our homes, hope that means that really is less energy being wasted in our homes, and hope that will help bring energy bills down, but also create the jobs that people else needs as well. You know, I think there's the Future Generations Commissioners research that showed that it's cost 15 billion to decarbonise housing in Wales, but that would save 4 billion in the NHS and create around the economic 20,000 or 30,000 jobs, which would help, and then these would be jobs that then help uplift people out of poverty and provide real opportunities for young people as well. So I think, which is it is really easy to focus on the negatives here. I think that it's a real sort of optimism here that this crisis does propose opportunities that we should take full advantage of.
I think one of the really interesting bits, especially around the climate strikes with young people, is I'm not seeing climate change as a subject that's being politicised with young people. I'm seeing just a general understanding in young people that this is a crisis, we need to do something to solve it. I think I know a lot of people of all different political views, and yet I don't know anyone roughly my age that doesn't want to do something about it. So we definitely have a generation of people that want to act. I think one of the main issues with it is when discussing it, a lot of people talk about climate change being fixed as a personal issue, that it's what can you do personally to help fix things. And you know, you've got some amazing alternatives. You've got using less plastic, less food waste, using public transport, and all that kind of thing. But it comes down to cost as well. So many of the more environmentally friendly options out there can be really quite expensive, especially for young people who really want to be able to use these things. And I think we need to change the way we talk about climate change from being a what can you do to what can we all do together to do the change, because not everyone is in a situation where they can make those changes. And so many of the things around Wales are different depending where you're from. Even down to recycling systems. Depending where you live in Wales, you can do completely different things. You have completely different opportunities to actually be able to do those changes. So I think we actually need to make it standardised across Wales of this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it together, and it's not up to you personally to make this change.
Absolutely. Just going on to our final question, if we just give the answers as briefly as we can, this last one, just so that we're running out of time. But how strong, excuse me, do the panellists feel that youth representation is within their organisations, and how do they feel that they can work with young people going forwards to ensure their voices are heard? Are decisions that affect young people in their organisations normally made by young people themselves? Derek, we start off with you with Shelter Cymru.
I believe Shelter Cymru does a good job at engaging young people. That we do this when it comes to policy. There's policies that involve young people. We do go and talk to young people. We do go into schools with the early prevention scheme, and we also do it as well through our pathway program. But at the end of the day, we are still keen to learn more. And if anyone does sort of go after this, actually, you know what, you think Shelter Cymru might be a bit distant or doesn't, you know, to come and talk to us, we are more than welcome and happy to sort of listen. You know, because we don't want to just sort of be sat on the sidelines. We know that housing and homes are important to everyone. So you guys do have any ideas or do just want to chat, feel free to talk to us, you know. And I can give you my email and we can have the discussions. I don't want it to be like, you know, just because you know, I know how nerve-wracking it can be to ask a question at an event like this. So if you do have any sort of feedback or anything like that, please come and talk to me. And you know, I know I am tall and look scary from all, I promise I'm not.
Derek, what do you think?
Okay, so obviously this, if we're going to go with the organisation, so let's go with Senedd. I think that obviously the fact that there is a youth Senedd, that's an amazing thing. You know, and they. But sure, am I cheating by talking about the youth Senedd there? Should I just talk about the Senedd itself and what we do?
That's tricky. Go with the second one, yeah.
Yeah, let's not take the easy way out because I'm not going to be on the coattails of these two gentlemen. Okay, so I think that there is a lot more that the Senedd, without the youth Senedd, should be doing. With a few other MSs, we've set up a cross-party group on actually climate, nature and well-being recently, and we wanted youth voices to be a central part of this, and we're trying to work with the climate ambassadors so that it's not just, oh, let's have a tokenistic, and now we'll hear from young people in every meeting. No, let's make sure that we're working together to form the agenda every time and things like that. I think we need to be working collaboratively in more opportunities like that, and I also think we need to be finding better ways of engaging, like we were talking earlier, but we need to find better ways of engaging with the young people who don't find politics interesting, or who don't feel at stake. And again, I hate the phrase, oh, harder to reach, because no, that implies it's their fault. No, it's our fault. And I think that we need to be finding better ways to do that. So yeah, there's really positive things I think that the Senedd is doing, but I'd love us to be doing even more, and I want to help be part of that. So I mean, I think, yeah, how would I mark the Senedd? I'd say really great so far, but there's still room for improvement, definitely.
Thanks, Alex. Alex, in terms of the youth Senedd, the youth Parliament, what do you think, could they do more to make sure that they reach more people? Instead of saying, you know, it implies that it's their fault, but can the youth Parliament do more to do more outreach work, perhaps?
Yeah, so I know the Youth Parliament are currently going around schools talking to young people and introducing their Youth Parliament members. But I think if we were to go around schools a bit more often and Youth Parliament members are able to go actually into the schools and have meetings with the pupils, even if it's just with the school council, where it gives them a chance to raise what they think is important and then raise it in their next residential or their next regional meeting. I think that'd be a great start. But all around, I think the Youth Parliament are doing an amazing job. They're very diverse. Obviously, we have our constituency members, but then we also have organisation members. We get people from Voices from Care Community, Havai, Carers Trust, loads of different organisations which offer voices to some people who may not usually get a voice in certain situations. So I think they're doing a great job with regards to involving young people in politics. Yeah, I think if we were able to talk to young people more in schools, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, if I put my teacher hat back on for a second, I remember one of the outreach workers from the Youth Parliament, it was during COVID time, and so there was a live Zoom call, which was great to kind of introduce the idea of the Youth Parliament, and they kind of went through the issues that were devolved to Wales, but it was kind of squeezed into a 10-minute call period at the end of the day. You know, the people that were running around all afternoon, they weren't kind of engaged in that session then. But as you said, Alice, if you know, hopefully now you can go into schools and be able to be kind of more engaging. I think there's something to be said that, you know, of course, there's a fantastic team of Youth Parliament. I'm not denying that in any sense, but the person that spoke to those people was an adult. It wasn't somebody like you, Alice, or somebody who's actually been elected or been through that process. And the two times that I heard from the Youth Parliament in that term before the election was both, you know, two adults. They never heard of a young person who had been part of the Youth Parliament who was hoping to apply. And I asked my form class at the time, I said, was anybody going to go for this? And they were just like, what, go for what? They just didn't understand that it could be them, or they could be the person who they were being, you know, shown on the screen. And so I think, you know, from the Youth Parliament point of view, they did a fantastic job. But I think in terms of our education system, we need to be open enough to allow them in more, allow them to have those talks, and engage our students properly so they feel part of that process. And to finish off, you know, in terms of our work in Plaid Ifanc, how can we make sure that young people's voices are heard even more if they are a new member, or if they're, you know, obviously everyone in the community is a member, but if they're not active member perhaps, what can they do to get their voices heard?
I think one of the amazing steps that we've been able to make recently is that we now have free membership for much younger Plaid Ifanc members, which is a brilliant step, because I know a lot of people who were interested but didn't want to have to, weren't able to either afford membership fee or didn't want to have to ask parents because maybe they had different views or just, you know, didn't want to do that. So brilliant step.
Yeah.
Just as a little advertisement, we're currently doing our Plaid Ifanc collections. So we're currently in the middle of trying to get more young people's voices on our committees so we can speak to more people and to be able to have a more diverse range of people in Plaid Ifanc represented. We want to be able to have the best range of people that we possibly can, and we want to hopefully be able to have more events soon so that even if you don't want to stand for election and you don't want to be someone who's kind of outward facing, that you can still come to us and still come to events and speak up and have your voice heard on social media or, you know, hopefully more in-person events. Yeah, we're hopefully going to get more people. Hopefully we've been able to meet some amazing people in conference, which we have. Thank you to everyone for coming. But yeah, with also council elections coming up, we've been trying to push for more young candidates standing, because I think it's really important to have young representation in your councils.
Absolutely.
And that young people's view of politics isn't, oh, it's for older people who look like this and who are from that place.
Yeah.
We want to be able to have every type of person who possibly can in Plaid Ifanc. If we're lacking in any way, please tell us. If you have ideas for what we can do to find more people, please just say, and we will listen, and we will do everything we can to find more people and get them to join us, and hopefully make some change.
Yeah. Before I wrap up, there were any questions for any of our panellists or anything?
I should probably extend this point as well, that as Plaid Ifanc and as supporting candidates in the election, what we're doing is that we're decided to support young candidates financially. So we're going to be sending out an email to the constituency. So if you are a young candidate standing in the election, we'll send out a Google form and fill it out and apply to have some funding to help the campaign. So that email will go out next week. So if you do want some financial support with your campaigns, fill out the form. I think Gwen or someone from Tigran will send it out. But if you need help, you know, you need to take campaign or anything, we're all here to help you, and we'll be able to get activists to help you. So do let us know.
Thanks, Guillaume.
That's brilliant.
Thanks, Elif. Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? You know, that a financial burden shouldn't be, you know, stopping somebody from being able to run in their communities. Thank you so much for coming today. Before I wrap up, I just want to let you all know that our Plaid Ifanc conference is next month. If any of you fancy coming, we are in Wrexham next month, in Glyndŵr University, on the 23rd of April. Skip. And based on what we all just said there.
I was just thinking that's such a good graphic.
I don't do that. I'm based in Wrexham at the University on the 23rd of April, so please come along. And in terms of what we are just about funding young candidates, obviously we need financial means to do that. And so we are asking if you could kindly donate to us today. There is a bucket on the way. I think it's like a wine cooler, I think, actually. there is a storage vessel of some sort on the way out the door. And we do have a card reader. So, yeah, if you haven't got cash, it's not a area. But thank you so much to everyone for attending today, for, as I said, staying to the end of our conference. It's really, really appreciated. And a massive thank you to all of our panellists.